What makes a speaker a good speaker? How do they sound? What do they look like? How do they dress? Now, I've been grading speeches for over a decade now, and I've become increasingly worried that some of the ways that we might evaluate speeches are exclusionary. And in this video, I'm going to explain why I believe that is the case, looking at how we think about eye contact, appearance, vocal pauses, body language, and poise. So let's dive right in. So in this video, I'm going to analyze this public speaking rubric that I found through a sample Google search. You can find similar rubrics in classrooms across the United States, in both high schools and colleges, and you can likely find these rubrics across the world. Rubrics reflect the instructor assumptions of what counts as a good speech. By looking at these rubrics, we can start to build a mental picture of what counts as a good speaker based off the rubric. Looking at these rubrics helps us reflect on our own assumptions of what it means to give a good speech. And we should do that reflection. We should do that to ensure that our assumptions are not excluding those based off what we believe bodies should do and what good speakers should be capable of. A former grad student, Mary Katie, and I wrote an essay about public speaking rubrics and exclusion. Please find the link to that essay in the description below. To be clear, the reason for this video is not to bash people who use these rubrics or hold these assumptions. Rather, it is my goal to help us all think a little bit more about how we can improve our assessment of speech and communication to make it just a little more just and inclusive. So let's start with eye contact. In my first 10 years of teaching public speaking, every rubric I encountered assessed eye contact and promoted eye contact a lot. Many textbooks also encourage maintaining as much eye contact as possible, but the promotion of eye contact can reinforce ableist assumptions about speaking. For example, blind folks might not be able to make eye contact with every single person in the audience, and they might not know where every single member of the audience is located to look at them. Neurodivergent folks, including those on the spectrum, may be uncomfortable with eye contact, especially the eye contact demanded in public speaking rubrics. Eye contact for those folks can provoke anxiety and undermine performance, making eye contact a not productive strategy for them. Like eye contact, evaluating appearance can privilege some over others. If I'm honest, I have a huge problem with grading appearance as an instructor. I can barely dress myself, so I have no place assessing others based off of how they look or how they dress. And here's a quick story about why I feel that way. I debated in high school. I have a vivid memory of a male judge writing to my female partner that she should dress more professionally. The offense, she decided to wear flats instead of high heels. But unfortunately, some rubrics do contain criteria about dress and appearance. When we judge appearance, three exclusionary assumptions can surface that influence our assessment. The first is class. Good-looking clothing can be really expensive. Requiring a suit and tie to consider someone professional creates a barrier for those struggling to make ends meet. This is why solutions like clothing closets and donating clothes matter, but we should also address the root of the issue, assessing people's character or qualifications based off their appearance and how they dress. The second is gender. What society counts as appropriate professional attire varies greatly based off of sex and gender. I never once was encouraged to wear high heels at a debate tournament, and maybe would have found myself on the receiving end of a slur or a correction from a judge if I had. But my partner was encouraged to wear high heels when I never was. The difference are sex and gender expression. The third is race. Recently, cities, states, and the federal government in the United States have debated the Crown Act. Now, the Crown Act provides workplace protections for people who wear their hair as it naturally grows out of their head. This act is a response to businesses telling workers that they have to change their natural hair to come to work and look professional. And so there's a connection between their appearance, race, and ideas about professionalism, because these requests are typically directed to people of color and Black women. We should proceed with much caution if we assess someone based off their appearance, and I, for one, believe we should not. We should also proceed with caution when we assess folks' facial expressions. Based off this particular rubric, speakers should use facial expressions to add to their message and reinforce the content of the speech. For certain people, however, control of facial expressions may be more difficult. including those who have experienced strokes, those with other health conditions, and neurodivergent people. In addition, a blind individual might not be able to observe certain gestures and facial expressions, and so the rubric also implies that someone who is capable of seeing is necessary to effectively assess a speech. So if we assume that facial expressions and controlling facial expressions is key to effective persuasive messages, we have maintained an exclusionary assumption. Likewise, many rubrics require an assessment of body movement, including standing at the podium and controlling one's gestures and using gestures that reinforce your message. Of course, people who use wheelchairs might not be able to stand, and those with chronic pain conditions might find it more difficult to move around the room or use gestures that reinforce their message. Those experiencing Parkinson's, ALS, or other health conditions may not be able to control their movement in the way that public speaking textbooks and rubrics encourage. The promotion of movement and standing subtly circulates ableist assumptions about what a good speaker should be capable of doing. Many rubrics and textbooks also emphasize that speakers should pronounce words correctly, be as fluid as possible in their speech, and avoid vocal pauses. The problem is that people who have stutters or stammers might not be able to maintain the same level of fluidity as others. Regardless of what you believe about President Joe Biden and his policies, some of the criticisms of his speaking underscore this point. Biden has a documented stutter, and much of the media coverage about it emphasizes his struggle to overcome that stutter. Yet commentators still assess the quality of his speaking based off of his stutter in a negative way. So this relates to social assumptions about how people with stutters are not as convincing of speakers, and even the attempt to overcome a stutter shows the belief or expectation that those with stutters are not as strong of speakers as those without. Moreover, by promoting the correct pronunciation of words, rubrics can place English as second language speakers or those with heavy accents at a disadvantage. They may not pronounce the word in the same normatively correct manner that you might expect, and they may not have learned how to pronounce the word in the same normatively correct manner that you might expect. Regionalism can also slip in. Is it soda or is it pop? Is it caramel or is it caramel? Is it a bubbler or is it a drinking fountain? When we are looking at whether or not people are pronouncing words correctly, the region that they are from might also influence how we assess them. And so comment your answer below. Is it soda? Is it pop? Is it caramel or caramel? Is it bubbler or a drinking fountain? Finally, rubrics also encourage folks to appear calm, relaxed, confident, and avoid seeming anxious. Now, as a person who experiences severe anxiety and post-traumatic stress, a lot of these rubrics seem to dismiss real issues that people face. Yes, people with severe anxiety or PTSD may seem anxious in their speech. As audience members, we should not discount their speech, or as instructors evaluate their speech based off that anxiety. Instead, we should work to focus on their content and the message of their speech rather than disregarding them because of their anxiety. Today, we have covered some potentially heavy topics about our assumptions about good speaking and what our assumptions about good speaking might exclude. Again, my goal is not to bash anyone or to make anyone feel bad for how they have assumed good speech should look. Instead, I'm trying to encourage us all to think more deeply about our assumptions and reflect on whether or not these assumptions could be more just and more inclusive. So thank you so much for watching. If you have not done already, please like and subscribe to support this educational content, and please continue to reflect on your assumptions about speaking and whether or not they can exclude certain people based off what we deem to be a good speech.